I am Diana Sterling, 34 years old, and tonight I am about to evict my own family from the mansion they stole from my future. It is a cold night in Washington, D.C., the kind of cold that seeps into your bones, but the chill I feel isn't from the weather, it's from the ice in my veins. Before I tell you about the moment my mother fainted face first into a red velvet cake, a moment I will cherish forever, let me know where you are watching from in the comments. I love seeing how far these stories travel, and trust me, you're going to want to stick around for this one. The bass from the stereo system was vibrating through the floorboards of the Sterling family mansion. It wasn't just loud, it was oppressive. The crystal chandelier in the foyer, a relic from the 1920s that my grandmother had loved, was shaking ever so slightly, the crystals chiming against each other like nervous teeth chattering. The house smelled of expensive perfume, roasting prime rib, Cuban cigars, and the underlying, rotting stench of desperate debt. I stood by the heavy velvet curtains near the French doors, nursing a glass of sparkling water. I was wearing a simple black dress, sharp, tailored, professional. It was cashmere and silk, costing more than my brother's entire wardrobe. But to my family, I just looked like the boring, unlucky sister who worked too hard and lived too small. I gripped the cold glass, using the condensation to ground myself. Inside my purse, resting against my hip, was a file folder that weighed practically nothing but carried the explosive power of a nuclear warhead. Diana, you actually came. I thought you'd be too busy clipping coupons. The voice boomed across the room, cutting through the music. It was Caleb, my younger brother, the golden boy. He was 30 years old, but looked like an overgrown toddler playing dress-up in a suit that was too tight across the shoulders and a watch that was comically large for his wrist. He had a champagne flute in one hand and a thick cigar in the other, playing the part of the tycoon he desperately wanted to be. "I wouldn't miss it, Caleb," I said, keeping my voice even, devoid of the shaking rage I felt inside. "Happy New Year." He laughed, a wet, boisterous sound, and wrapped a heavy, sweaty arm around my shoulders. He smelled of brandy, expensive cologne, and arrogance. He turned to the group of people he was holding court with, mostly sycophants, business partners who were just leeching off him, and old friends of our parents who didn't realize the Sterling money had run dry years ago. "Everyone, this is Diana," Caleb announced, his voice slurring slightly. "She made the trek all the way from D.C. Tell them, Di, how's the studio apartment? The closet?" "It's a condo, Caleb," I corrected him softly, staring straight ahead. Right, a condo," he winked at his friends. Jerry, his best friend and primary yes-man, snickered into his drink. "But it's small, right? Mom told me you don't even have a guest room. I mean, look at this place." He gestured grandly around the room, sweeping his arm towards the high ceilings and the oil paintings. "This is how a Sterling lives. Space, history, grandeur. You know, I almost feel bad for you, stuck in that little box in the city. It must be so depressing to come home to nothing." My mother, Linda, drifted over from the buffet table. She was dripping in jewelry, diamonds and emeralds that I knew for a fact weren't insured anymore because they couldn't pay the premiums. She looked fragile, her makeup trying to hide the stress lines around her eyes. "Now, Caleb, don't tease your sister," she said, though her smile was tight and mocking, her eyes scanning my simple dress with disapproval. "Not everyone has your vision, sweetheart. Diana is practical. She likes her small life. It's safer for her. Some people just aren't built for greatness." "Safe is boring," Caleb declared, taking a swig of his champagne. "I'm closing a deal next week that's going to put this house on the cover of Architectural Digest. $5 million, Di. That's what Nemesis Capital is putting into my firm. Can you imagine? 5 million. I felt a cold, sharp smile touch my lips. It felt foreign. Nemesis Capital. That sounds intense. It's aggressive, Caleb said, puffing his chest out. Just like me. They see talent. Unlike some people who just push paper around. He looked at me pointedly, his eyes gleaming with malice. You know, if you need a loan to upgrade that apartment of yours, maybe get a view that isn't a brick wall, just ask. Once the wire transfer hits tomorrow, I can probably toss you a few grand. Consider it charity. The group laughed. It was a cruel, practiced sound, a symphony of exclusion. My father, Robert, joined the circle, clapping Caleb on the back with a heavy hand. That's my boy, generous to a fault. Diana, you should thank your brother. Most men wouldn't be so kind to a sibling who has achieved so little. I looked at them, really looked at them. My father, whose pride was built on a foundation of sand. My mother, who enabled a monster because she saw him as an extension of herself, and Caleb, who thought the world owed him a living simply because he existed. I'm good, Caleb, I said, taking a sip of my water to hide my expression. I have everything I need, everything. Suit yourself, he sneered, losing interest in his favorite punching bag. Just don't come crying to me when the rent goes up on your little shoebox. He turned back to his admirers, launching into another story about his business prowess, a story I knew was a lie because I had read his bank statements this morning. I knew exactly how much was in his account, -$400. I walked away, my heels clicking softly on the marble floor. I found a quiet corner near the library, away from the noise. Uncle Mitch was there, nursing a scotch, sitting in a leather wingback chair. He was the only one in this family who didn't make me want to scream. They're in rare form tonight, Mitch muttered, looking at Caleb over the rim of his glass. They have no idea, I whispered, clutching my purse tighter. Are you sure about this, Diana? Mitch asked, looking at me with deep concern. Once you pull this trigger, there is no going back. You know that. The family will be destroyed, humiliated. I looked at Caleb, who was now spilling champagne on the antique Persian rug, a rug worth $15,000, and laughing about it as a maid rushed to clean it up. I thought about the files in my bag. I thought about the eviction notice sitting in the glove compartment of my Volvo outside. The family was destroyed a long time ago, Uncle Mitch, I said, my voice trembling with suppressed adrenaline. Tonight isn't a murder. It's just the autopsy. To understand why I was standing there with a nuclear bomb in my purse, why I was willing to destroy my own reputation to take them down, you have to understand the history. You have to understand that tonight wasn't just about money. It was about 30 years of being invisible. It was about the slow, agonizing erosion of my self-worth. My mind drifted back to my 16th birthday. That was the day the crack in my heart finally broke open. We were living in a different house then, in the suburbs. It wasn't as big as the mansion, but it was still impressive, with a manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. I had been getting straight A's since middle school. I was captain of the debate team, editor of the school paper. I worked weekends at a diner called the Corner Cafe to pay for my own clothes because Mom said buying me designer brands was a waste of capital since I wasn't socially active enough to show them off. For months, I had hinted that I needed a computer, a real one. I wanted to apply for summer internships in coding and graphic design, and the school library closed too early for me to get any real work done. We have a surprise for you, Dad had said that morning. The sun was shining, and the air smelled of freshly cut grass. We were standing in the driveway. There was a large object covered in a blue tarp. My heart had leaped into my throat. Maybe a car? Or maybe a desk setup. Dad whipped the tarp off with a flourish. It was a brand new cherry red Jeep Wrangler, leather seats, lifted tires, a custom sound system. It was beautiful. It was freedom. "Oh my God," I gasped, stepping forward, my hands covering my mouth. "Dad, Mom." Dad stepped in front of me, laughing. "Whoa, easy there, Tiger. This isn't for you." I froze. The world seemed to stop spinning. "What?" "This is for Caleb," Mom said, coming out of the house with a video camera, filming the scene. "But Caleb is 12, I said, my voice shaking. "He can't drive. He won't be able to drive for 4 years." "He will eventually," Dad said, tossing the keys to my 12-year-old brother who was grinning like a hyena in the passenger seat. "We got a great deal, and we wanted to have it ready for him. It's an investment in his image. A boy needs to know he has wheels waiting for him. It builds confidence." "But it's my birthday," I whispered, tears pricking my eyes. "We didn't forget you, silly," Mom said, not looking up from the camera viewfinder. She reached behind a rose bush and pulled out a plastic grocery bag, a Target bag. She tossed it to me. I caught it. It was heavy. Inside was a laptop, but not a new one. It was thick, heavy like a brick, and scratched. It was a Dell Latitude from maybe 5 or 6 years prior. I opened it. The screen had a dead pixel line running down the center, and the E key was missing, exposing the rubber membrane underneath. "Bought it off a nice college kid on Craigslist," Dad said, watching Caleb honk the horn of the Jeep. "He said it still turns on if you hold the power cord at a certain angle. You have to wiggle it a bit. It's perfect for your typing things." "Typing things?" I repeated, staring at the missing key. "Dad, I need to run coding software. I need RAM. This won't even run a web browser without crashing." "Don't be ungrateful, Diana," Mom snapped, her face hardening as she finally lowered the camera. "That Jeep cost a fortune. We can't buy 2 expensive gifts in 1 year. Besides, Caleb is sensitive. He needs to feel big. He struggles with his self-esteem. You're strong. You're a survivor. You can handle the scraps." "You can handle the scraps." That phrase burned itself into my brain. It became the motto of my life in the Sterling household. I watched Caleb honk the horn again, laughing maniacally. He looked at me through the windshield and stuck his tongue out. He knew he was the prince, and I was the peasant. I didn't cry. I remember that clearly. I refused to let them see me cry. I took the heavy, broken laptop up to my room. I spent 4 hours fixing the power cord with electrical tape. I found a spare keycap from an old keyboard at school to replace the E, and I used that piece of junk to learn how to code, how to track markets, and how to research scholarships. That night, they took Caleb out to a steakhouse to celebrate his new car. They left me $20 on the kitchen counter and told me to order a pizza. I sat alone in the dark kitchen, eating a pepperoni pizza that tasted like cardboard, listening to the silence of the house. I looked at the family photos on the wall. Caleb was in the center of every single one, smiling, holding trophies he didn't earn, wearing clothes I couldn't afford. I was usually on the edge, or blurred, or holding the camera. That was the night I stopped looking at them as parents. They were just obstacles, and I was going to learn how to hurdle them. Back at the New Year's party, I looked at Caleb, now 30. He still had that Jeep. It was rusted out in the garage, the transmission blown because he never changed the oil. He had destroyed it, just like he destroyed everything given to him. I, on the other hand, still had the hard drive from the old Dell. It contained the first spreadsheet I ever made, a spreadsheet titled The Escape Plan. The favoritism was painful, a dull ache that I learned to live with. But the theft? That was criminal. That was the moment the wound turned into a scar that would never fade, a scar that throbbed every time I looked at my bank account. It was the spring of my senior year. The mail had come. I held the thick envelope in my hands, feeling the weight of it. Harvard University. I had done the impossible. I had worked 3 jobs, maintained a 4.0 GPA, and captained the debate team, all while sleeping 4 hours a night. I ran into the living room, waving the acceptance letter, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst. "Mom, Dad," I screamed, I got in. I got into Harvard." My parents were sitting on the plush leather couch watching a reality TV show. They looked at each other, and then they looked at the floor. There was no joy, no jumping up and down, no hugs, just a heavy, suffocating awkwardness that filled the room like smoke. "That's nice, Diana," Dad mumbled, not making eye contact. "Nice? It's Harvard," I said, confused, my smile faltering. "I know it's expensive, but we have the college fund. You guys said Grandma started it when I was born. There should be enough for the first 2 years, and I can get loans for the rest. I ran the numbers." Mom stood up, wringing her hands together nervously. "About that fund, honey." My stomach dropped. I felt nausea rise in my throat. "What? Did the market crash? Did we lose it? What happened?" "Not exactly," Dad said, standing up to stand beside Mom, a united front against their daughter, always. "We had to reallocate the assets." Reallocate? I felt like I couldn't breathe. Reallocate to where? That money was in a trust. "Caleb got into a bit of trouble," Mom said quickly, her voice high and pitchy. "It wasn't his fault. He was just a boy. A girl. She stopped her car too fast at a stop sign. Caleb rear-ended her. In the Jaguar." "The Jaguar?" I asked, my voice rising. "You let him drive the Jaguar? He's 16. He's been driving for 2 weeks." "He was trying to impress a date, Diana. You wouldn't understand the pressures men face in society," Dad shouted, suddenly angry that I was questioning them. The other driver, she was from a wealthy family, the Ashfords. They were going to sue. They were talking about reckless endangerment charges. We needed to settle out of court to keep Caleb's record clean. If he has a criminal record, he can't get into a fraternity later. It would ruin his networking potential. I stared at them. The room spun. The acceptance letter in my hand felt suddenly heavy, like a tombstone. "You spent my college fund, my entire future, over $100,000 to pay off a girl because Caleb was driving recklessly?" "It cost everything, Diana," Mom said, tears welling up in her eyes, tears for herself, for the stress she had endured, not for me. "The lawyers, the settlement, the repairs to the Jag, the fund is gone, all of it. We are liquidating the savings just to pay the mortgage this month." "So I can't go," I whispered. The realization hit me like a physical blow. "You can go to state," Dad shrugged, dismissing my tragedy as a minor inconvenience. "It's a good school, less pressure. Honestly, you probably wouldn't have fit in at Harvard anyway. Those people are snobs. You're more blue-collar." Blue-collar. The words stung. I didn't go to Harvard. I couldn't afford it. I went to the state university. I worked 3 jobs, barista in the morning, tutor in the afternoon, and shelving books at the library at night. I lived on ramen and adrenaline. I graduated with honors, debt, and a heart made of stone. Meanwhile, Caleb didn't even go to college. He tried for a semester at a private liberal arts college, got kicked out for partying and failing every class, and then Dad hired him at the family firm as a consultant. He spent his days playing golf and his nights drinking on the company card. That day, standing in the living room with my Harvard acceptance letter limp in my hand, I learned the most important lesson of my life. In this family, Caleb's mistakes were expensive emergencies that required immediate sacrifice. My dreams were disposable luxuries. I never forgave them. I pretended to. I came to Thanksgiving. I sent Christmas cards. I smiled when they talked about Caleb's potential. But I was biding my time. I was watching their finances. I saw how they refinanced the house to pay for Caleb's gambling debts. I saw how they liquidated their retirement to fund his failed app startup. They were bleeding out, and they didn't even know it. And the saddest part? They thought I was the failure because I didn't ask them for money. They thought my independence was an insult to their generosity. Well, tonight, at this party, they were finally going to get the respect they deserved. If the college fund was the physical theft, the death of my grandmother, Beatrice, was the spiritual murder. That was the day I snapped. That was the day I became the narrative architect of their downfall. It was 5 years ago. I was working as a junior analyst in Chicago. I was making decent money, but I lived frugally, saving every penny, driving a used car, living in a studio apartment that smelled of curry from the restaurant downstairs. I got a call from Aunt Karen, not my parents. Aunt Karen, my mother's sister, who was just as shallow but with less money. "Diana," she said, her voice clipped and cold, "I thought you should know. Your grandmother Beatrice passed away last night." I dropped my coffee mug. It shattered on the floor, brown liquid splashing everywhere, staining my cheap rug. Grandma Beatrice was the only person who had ever hugged me without looking over my shoulder to see if someone more important was walking in. She was the one who taught me to read. She was the one who slipped me $20 bills when my parents weren't looking. "What?" I choked out, falling to my knees to pick up the ceramic shards. "When is the funeral? I'll fly home immediately. I can be there by tonight." There was a pause on the line, a long, cold, calculating pause. "Actually, Diana," Karen said, "Robert and Linda think it's best if you don't come." "Excuse me?" My voice rose to a shriek. "She's my grandmother. I loved her." "It's just, well, it's going to be a very high-profile service," Karen explained, as if discussing a charity gala or a fashion show. "Lots of important investors for Caleb's new venture will be there. Your parents are worried about appearances." "Appearances?" I asked, gripping the phone so tight I thought it would crack. "You know how you are, dear," Karen sighed, a sound of fake pity. "You're struggling." "You look tired. Your clothes are cheap. You drive that old car. Robert thinks it would be embarrassing for Caleb if his sister showed up looking like a pauper. It raises questions about the family's solvency. We need to project success. We need to look like winners." I couldn't speak. I felt a physical blow to my chest, harder than any punch. They were banning me from my grandmother's funeral because I didn't look rich enough, because my grief might distract from Caleb's networking. "We told everyone you're away in Europe on business," Karen added breezily. "It sounds better, so just stay in Chicago. Send flowers, but not cheap ones, okay? Make sure they are lilies, expensive ones." She hung up. I sat on my kitchen floor, amidst the broken ceramic and cold coffee, sobbing until my throat was raw. But then, the tears stopped, just like that. They turned off like a faucet. Something clicked in my brain. It was a sharp, metallic sound, like a safety being switched off on a gun, or a vault door locking shut. They care about money, I thought, staring at the wall. That is the only language they speak. They don't care about love, or blood, or loyalty, or grief, just money. Fine, I will speak their language. I will speak it better than they ever could. I didn't go to the funeral. Instead, I took a week off work. I didn't go to Europe. I drove to the courthouse in the county where Grandma lived. I pulled her probate records, and I found what they were hiding. Grandma Beatrice hadn't just died. She had died wealthy. She had assets, and she had left a will. But here was the kicker. My parents were the executors, and they were trying to hide the assets. They were rushing to liquidate her estate to pour cash into Caleb's failing real estate business. But they were sloppy. They were arrogant. I stood in that dusty records room, smelling of old paper and toner, surrounded by the silence of the law, and I made a vow. I would not just survive. I would dominate. I would become the richest person in the Sterling family, and I would own them. That was the snap. The Diana who wanted her mommy and daddy's love died that day in the records room. The Diana who was a shark, cold, calculating, and hungry was born. I went back to Chicago. I quit my job. I moved to D.C. because the market was more aggressive there. I worked 18 hours a day. I didn't buy clothes. I didn't date. I invested. I leveraged. I climbed. And I watched. I set up Google alerts for Sterling real estate. I hired a private investigator. I tracked every penny they wasted. Now, 5 years later, I was the CFO of a major firm. I was worth millions, but nobody in my family knew. To them, I was still poor Diana in her studio apartment. And tonight, the ghost of Grandma Beatrice was going to get her revenge. The transition from victim to predator wasn't overnight, but it was relentless. In D.C., I reinvented myself. I stripped away the softness. I stopped being Diana the sister and became Diana the CFO. I joined a firm called Vanguard Holdings. My boss, Marcus Thorne, was a man who ate weaklings for breakfast. He was a legend in D.C., a man who could crumble a company with a phone call. He saw something in me, that cold, hard chip on my shoulder. "You're hungry," Marcus had told me during my interview, staring at me with steel-gray eyes. "Not for food, for control. I like that. People who want control are predictable. They work hard." I worked my way up from senior analyst to VP and finally to CFO in 4 years. My salary jumped from $80,000 to $450,000, then to a cool $1 million with bonuses. I managed portfolios worth billions. But I didn't upgrade my lifestyle significantly. I bought the penthouse, yes, but I bought it under an LLC to keep my name off the public records. I drove a reliable Volvo, not a Ferrari. I put my money into high-yield bonds, tech startups, and distressed debt. Specifically, I started buying my family's debt. It started small. Caleb maxed out a credit card on a trip to Vegas. The debt was sold to a collection agency. I bought the portfolio. Dad missed payments on the commercial loan for his office. I bought the note through a shell company I named Nemesis Capital. Nemesis was the Greek goddess of retribution against those who succumbed to hubris, arrogance before the gods. It fit perfectly. It was my private joke. I met with my lawyer, Mr. Arthur Blackwood, every month. Arthur was a shark in a 3-piece suit, a man who charged $1,000 an hour and was worth every penny. We met in his office overlooking the Capitol, drinking espresso and plotting the demise of my family's finances. "You have them surrounded, Diana," Arthur told me 6 months ago, sliding a thick file across his mahogany desk. "You hold the note on Caleb's business. You hold the second mortgage on your parents' house. And now," he paused for dramatic effect, tapping a document with his Mont Blanc pen, "the bank is looking to sell the primary mortgage on the mansion. They're behind 3 months. Buy it," I said, not hesitating. "It will cost you a significant portion of your liquidity," Arthur warned, raising an eyebrow. "If you do this, you are effectively their landlord. You become the bank. You take on the risk." "Buy it," I repeated, my voice steady. "I want the paper. I want the leverage." "They are looking for an investor," Arthur noted, looking at his notes. "Caleb is shopping around for an angel investor to save his company and pay off the arrears on the house. He's asking for $5 million. He calls it a bridge loan." I smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "I know. Have Nemesis Capital approach him. Tell him we're interested." dangle the carrot. You want to fund him? Arthur looked confused for the first time. No, I said, standing up and smoothing my skirt. I want to give him hope. I want him to believe he's won. I want him to throw a party to celebrate. I want him to invite all his friends. And then I want to pull the rug out. I want him to fall from the greatest height possible. It was cruel, I know that. But was it crueler than stealing a girl's education? Was it crueler than banning a granddaughter from a funeral? Was it crueler than 30 years of gaslighting? I built my trap with the precision of a spider spinning a web. I let Caleb believe Nemesis Capital was his savior. I let him brag. I let him spend money he didn't have on this New Year's Eve party to impress the investors. Standing at the party now, watching the ice sculpture of a swan melting in the center of the buffet, I checked my phone. I had a text from Arthur. The paperwork is finalized. The eviction notice is legal. We are ready when you are. I looked across the room. Caleb was opening another bottle of Dom Perignon, vintage 2008. That bottle cost $300. He hadn't paid his mortgage in 90 days, but he was drinking $300 champagne. The level of delusion was staggering. It was almost impressive. But I needed one more piece of the puzzle. I needed to know exactly how deep the rot went. And for that, I needed an inside man. Or rather, an inside woman. I excused myself from Uncle Mitch and navigated the crowd. I needed a moment to breathe, to prepare for the final act. I walked down the marble hallway, lined with portraits of my ancestors, stern-looking men who would have whipped Caleb for his laziness. They stared down at me, and for the first time, I felt like I belonged among them. I pushed open the door to the powder room. It was opulent, with gold fixtures, plush monogrammed towels, and a fainting couch. Standing there, reapplying her lipstick in the mirror, was Tiffany. Tiffany was Caleb's fiancée. She was 24 years old, beautiful in a way that seemed manufactured. Perfect hair, perfect teeth, perfect tan. My parents called her an Instagram model with a sneer, but they tolerated her because they thought she came from money. They hated her, of course. They thought she was a gold digger. They didn't realize the gold mine was empty. "Oh, hi, Diana," Tiffany said, startled. She dropped her lipstick into her purse with a clatter. Her hand was shaking. "Hi, Tiffany," I said, moving to the sink to wash my hands. The water was warm and smelled of lavender soap. Nice party. Caleb really went all out. Tiffany let out a short, bitter laugh. It sounded like glass breaking. "Yeah." "Great party. Cost $20,000. Put it on my credit card." I paused, water dripping from my hands. I turned off the tap slowly. "Your card?" Tiffany turned to me. Her eyes were red. She had been crying. "Caleb said his cards were cycling. He said the Nemesis money hits tomorrow, and he'll pay me back double. He promised. But..." She bit her lip, her facade crumbling. "He said that last month, too, and the month before." "Tiffany," I said, turning to face her, "why are you marrying him?" She looked down at her shoes. "I'm pregnant, Diana." My eyes widened. "Does he know?" "No," she whispered, "and I don't think I can tell him. Not until the money comes. He's been scary lately. Stressed, screaming at walls, throwing things. I'm scared, Diana. I think he's broke. Like, really broke." I looked at this girl. I had judged her, too. I thought she was part of the problem. I thought she was just another leech. But she was just another victim. Another prop in the Caleb show. Another woman being used by the Sterling men. "He is broke, Tiffany," I said, my voice low and urgent. "He's worse than broke. He's drowning, and he will pull you down with him." She looked at me with wide, terrified eyes. "How do you know?" Because I'm the one watching the water rise, I said. Listen to me. Do you want to get out of this? Do you want to save yourself and your baby? Yes, she sobbed, tears ruining her mascara. God, yes, but I don't have anywhere to go. I signed the prenup. Well, not a prenup, but he made me sign some papers for the business, said I was a partner, said it was for tax purposes. What papers? I asked sharply. My internal alarm bells started ringing. I took pictures, she said, fumbling for her phone with trembling fingers. I felt weird about it. He didn't let me read them. He just said, "Sign here, babe." Here. She showed me the screen. I zoomed in on the image. My blood ran cold. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. It was a loan application, a massive one, but it wasn't signed by Tiffany. It was signed by Robert and Linda Sterling, and underneath, as a guarantor, was my name. A forgery. A clumsy, stupid, desperate forgery. He tried to use your credit, Tiffany whispered, seeing the look on my face. I heard him on the phone with Jerry. He said, Diana has an 800 credit score. She won't notice a hit. But the bank rejected it because the signature didn't match. Can you send me these? I asked, my voice calm but deadly. Yeah, she said. She airdropped the photos to me. Diana, what's going to happen? I put a hand on her shoulder. Tonight, everything ends. When the yelling starts, and it will start, you go to the library. Uncle Mitch is there. Tell him I sent you. Do not stand next to Caleb. Do not stand next to my parents. Okay, she breathed. Thank you. I didn't know who to trust. I walked out of the bathroom. The final nail was in the coffin. Not only had they stolen my past, but Caleb had tried to steal my future credit to fund his delusion. He had tried to commit identity theft against his own sister. He had tried to mortgage my life to pay for his party. I wasn't just evicting a tenant anymore. I was taking down a criminal. I walked back into the party, and for the first time in years, I felt light. The burden of hoping they would change was gone. The guilt of destroying the family was gone. Now there was only the clean, sharp edge of the sword, and I was ready to swing it. I needed to verify the photos Tiffany sent. I couldn't rely on a blurry phone picture in court. I stepped out onto the terrace, the cold winter air biting at my bare arms. The wind whipped my hair, but I didn't feel it. I dialed Vance, my private investigator. Sterling. Vance answered on the first ring. He sounded awake, alert. He knew tonight was the night. Happy New Year. I just sent you 2 images, I said, watching my breath fog in the air. Inside the house, I could see the warm glow of the party, a stark contrast to the cold reality I was standing in. Verify the document ID numbers against the bank records you pulled last week. Hold on. I heard the clicking of a keyboard, fast, rhythmic. Okay, looking at the loan attempt from December 12th. Yes, this matches. Rejected by Chase Bank due to signature irregularity. But Diana, look at page 2. I swiped on my phone, my fingers numb. Holy hell. Yeah, Vance said, his voice grim. That's not just a loan application. That's a lien grant. If that had gone through and he defaulted, they would have come after your assets. He tried to put your penthouse up as collateral. He must have dug up the deed somehow. My hand tightened on the phone until my knuckles turned white. Caleb hadn't just tried to borrow money in my name. He had tried to leverage my home. The home he mocked. The home he called a shoebox. He was willing to make me homeless to save his ego. Is this enough for a fraud indictment? I asked. Diana, this is a slam dunk, Vance said. Attempted grand larceny, identity theft, wire fraud. I can have the police there in 20 minutes. I have a contact at the precinct. No, I said, not the police, not yet. I want them to know who did it. The police are just the cleanup crew. I want to be the executioner. You're the boss, Vance said. By the way, I also checked on the Nemesis Capital paperwork. The wire transfer confirmation Caleb thinks he has, it's a fake. He forged a confirmation letter to show your parents to keep them calm. He literally copy-pasted a logo onto a Word document. So he's lying to them too. He's lying to everyone, Diana. He's running a Ponzi scheme where the only investors are his parents and his future wife's credit cards. He is robbing Peter to pay Paul, and Peter is broke. Thanks, Vance. Stand by. I hung up. I looked through the glass doors. Caleb was standing on a chair now, raising a toast. My parents were looking up at him with adoration. They looked so proud. Proud of a thief. Proud of a liar. Proud of a son who would sell them down the river for a new watch. And there I was, the daughter who had built a real fortune, legally, ethically, standing in the cold. I opened my email and forwarded the documents to Mr. Blackwood. Subject, the trigger. Body, execute the default clause, prepare the projection. I'm going in. I walked back inside. The warmth of the room hit me, smelling of stale champagne and expensive perfume. Diana, Mom waved me over. She looked tipsy, her face flushed. Come join us. Caleb is making a speech about the future of the family. It's so inspiring. I wouldn't miss it for the world, I said. I walked to the center of the room. I didn't blend into the wallpaper this time. I walked with the stride of a CEO. I walked with the authority of someone who owns the building. People parted for me, sensing a change in the atmosphere. The prey had become the predator. I stopped right in front of the table where the massive red velvet cake sat. It had "Success" written on it in gold icing. It looked like blood. Caleb looked down at me from his chair. Glad you could join the winner's circle. Finally ready to admit I was right. The big money is here, baby. Nemesis is going to make us kings. Get down, Caleb, I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it cut through the room like a razor. It was the voice I used in boardrooms to fire incompetent executives. The music died down. People turned to look. Excuse me, Caleb laughed, but it was nervous. His eyes darted around the room. Get down off the chair, I repeated. You look ridiculous. And we need to talk about your investor. Oh, Nemesis? Caleb grinned, trying to recover his swagger. Jealous? Don't worry, once the $5 million hits tomorrow, I'll buy you a nicer car. Maybe a Honda, something reliable for your commute. The money isn't hitting tomorrow, Caleb, I said. What do you mean? Mom asked, stepping forward. Her smile faltered. Of course it is. He has the letter. The letter is a fake, Mom, I said, looking her in the eye, just like the loan application he tried to sign my name to. The room went dead silent. You could hear the ice melting in the buckets. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. What are you talking about? Dad demanded, his face turning red. Don't come in here and spread lies just because you're bitter. You're ruining the night. I'm not bitter, Dad, I said. I'm the owner. The owner of what? Caleb scoffed, climbing down from the chair. He looked annoyed, like I was a fly buzzing around his head. You own a condo and a used Volvo. Sit down, Diana. Have a drink. You're embarrassing yourself. I'm not talking about cars, I said. I reached into my bag and pulled out a sleek silver remote control. It connected to the smart TV system Caleb had bragged about installing earlier. I'm talking about Nemesis Capital. You know Nemesis? Caleb asked, confusion clouding his eyes. How? They're a private equity firm out of Delaware. I am Nemesis, I said. I pointed the remote at the massive 80-inch TV mounted above the fireplace. The screen flickered to life. It wasn't the football game anymore. It was a PowerPoint presentation. The logo, Nemesis Capital, appeared in red and black letters, and underneath, in smaller font, a subsidiary of Sterling Holdings, LLC, CEO, Diana Sterling. A collective gasp went through the room. It sounded like the air being sucked out of an airlock. "What is this?" Mom whispered, her hand going to her throat. "Diana, is this a joke? Did you make this?" "No joke, Mom," I said. "You wanted Caleb to have an investor? He got one. I bought his business debt 6 months ago. I bought his car loans 3 months ago. And, as of this morning," I clicked the remote. The screen changed to a document, a mortgage deed. "I bought the mortgage on this house." Caleb's face went pale. All the blood drained from his cheeks. You own the loan?" "I own the loan," I confirmed, "and I own the arrears. You haven't paid the mortgage in 90 days, Caleb. Mom and Dad haven't paid their portion in 6 months. You are in default." "We were waiting for the investment," Dad shouted, stepping forward aggressively. "The $5 million! Once that hits, we pay everything off." "There is no $5 million, I snapped. "I am the investor, and I am telling you right now, Nemesis Capital is declining the deal due to gross incompetence and fraudulent activity." "You can't do that!" Caleb screamed. He lunged forward, but Jerry, sensing the shift in power, held him back. "We have a deal. I have emails. We have a contract." "Emails from my assistant," I said calmly. "Who was instructed to keep you talking while we secured the liens? You fell for it, Caleb, because you're greedy and because you think everyone is as stupid as you are. You didn't even run a background check on the firm." "Why are you doing this?" Mom cried, tears streaming down her face, ruining her makeup. "To your own family? This is cruel. This is evil. How can you be so heartless?" "Evil?" I laughed. It was a harsh, barking sound that startled even me. "Evil is stealing a 16-year-old's college fund to pay for a Jaguar accident. Evil is banning your daughter from her grandmother's funeral because her clothes aren't expensive enough. This isn't evil. This is business. This is the market forces you always lectured me about. We gave you everything." Dad roared, veins bulging in his neck. "We put a roof over your head. We fed you." "You gave him a Jeep and me a broken laptop," I shouted back, losing my cool for the first time. The anger of 30 years poured out. "You gave him a trip to Italy and me a job delivering newspapers. And you know what? Thank you, because it made me hard, it made me smart, and it made me rich enough to buy you out." "We need that money, Diana," Mom pleaded, switching tactics instantly from anger to begging. She reached out a hand. "Please, just sign the deal. Give Caleb the $5 million. We can pay off the house. We can be a family again. We can start over." "A family?" I looked at them with disgust. "You don't want a family. You want a financier. You want an ATM that doesn't ask questions." "Well, the bank is closed." "I'll sue you," Caleb yelled, spit flying from his mouth. "I'll sue you for entrapment, for bad faith dealing." "Go ahead," I said, "but you'll need a lawyer, and lawyers cost money, which you don't have. In fact," I clicked the remote again. A new document appeared, a spreadsheet filled with red numbers. "This is a forensic accounting of your business, Caleb. You used company funds, my funds technically, since I own your debt, to pay for this party, to pay for Tiffany's ring, to pay for your gambling debts." I looked at Tiffany, who was standing by the door, pale and shaking. "Show them, Tiffany," I said. Tiffany stepped forward. The room watched her. She took a deep breath. She slid the massive diamond engagement ring off her finger. She threw it onto the floor. It bounced with a hollow clink and rolled towards Caleb's feet. "I'm done, Caleb," she said, her voice trembling but clear. "I'm not going to jail for you. and I'm not raising a baby in a prison. Tiffany? Caleb looked like he had been shot. Babe, wait. You're a fraud, she spat. Then she turned and ran out of the room, sobbing. The room was spinning out of control. The guests were whispering. Some were pulling out phones to record. Get out, Dad screamed at the guests. Everyone, get out. This is a private family matter. No pictures. People started scrambling for their coats, eager to escape the blast zone. But I wasn't done. Don't leave yet, I said. You haven't seen the dessert. The guests hovered by the door, caught between awkwardness and the irresistible urge to watch the train wreck. It was human nature. They wanted to see the blood. Diana, stop this, Mom hissed, grabbing my arm. Her grip was painful, her nails digging into my skin. You are embarrassing us. You are destroying our reputation. I'm embarrassing you? I pulled my arm away violently. You're living in a house you don't own, drinking champagne you didn't pay for, celebrating a business that is bankrupt. You embarrassed yourselves. I'm just turning on the lights. We can fix this, Dad said, trying to regain his composure. He adjusted his tie, employing his businessman voice, the voice he used to con investors. Diana, clearly you've done well for yourself. We're proud of you. We really are. We always knew you had it in you. I raised an eyebrow. Proud? 5 minutes ago, I was boring and safe. Yes, well, we were just pushing you, Dad lied smoothly. And look, family helps family. We're in a bit of a tight spot. Caleb made some mistakes, we all do. But if you just cover the arrears, let's say write a check for $500,000 tonight just to clear the immediate debts. We can discuss the rest later. We can work out a payment plan. I stared at him. My jaw actually dropped. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. You want me to give you $500,000 right now after everything I just said? It's an investment, Dad insisted. The house has equity. It will appreciate. The house is underwater, Dad. You refinanced it 3 times. You pulled every cent of equity out to pay for Caleb's failed ventures. Diana, Mom said, her voice trembling. Caleb needs a new car. The Jeep is dead. He needs a reliable vehicle to get to job interviews if the business fails. And we need to maintain our standing in the club. If we lose the membership, we lose our connections. Just $500,000. You have millions, right? It's nothing to you. You probably make that in a month. It's nothing to me? I felt a vein throb in my temple. Do you know how I got that money? I didn't get it from a settlement. I didn't get it from Mommy and Daddy. I worked. I ate ramen noodles for 3 years. I didn't take a vacation for a decade. I missed my friends' weddings because I was working. And you want me to hand it over so Caleb can buy a Range Rover and you can play golf? He's your brother, Mom screamed. He is the heir. He carries the name. He is a parasite, I screamed back, and you are the host. Don't you dare speak about him like that. Dad stepped forward, raising his hand as if to slap me. It was a reflex from my childhood. I didn't flinch. I stared him down. Do it, I dared him. Hit me. There are 20 witnesses and a camera rolling. Please, Dad, give me one more reason to destroy you. He lowered his hand, his face purple with rage, shaking. You are an ungrateful, cold-hearted bitch. Maybe, I said, but I'm a rich, ungrateful bitch, and I'm your landlord. Not for long, Caleb yelled. I'll file for bankruptcy, Chapter 11. You won't get a dime. I'll tie this up in court for years. Bankruptcy won't save you from fraud charges, Caleb, I said softly. What fraud? He bluffed, wiping sweat from his forehead. I made business errors. That's not a crime. I clicked the remote one last time. The image of the forged loan application appeared on the massive screen. My name forged in shaky black ink. That fraud, I said. Caleb froze. Mom looked at the screen, then at Caleb. Caleb? She whispered. Did you sign her name? I had to, Caleb cried, his voice cracking like a teenager's. I needed the money, and she wasn't using her credit. She just lets it sit there. It's not fair that she has so much and I have nothing. I deserve it. So you committed a felony? Dad asked, sinking into a chair. He looked old suddenly, defeated. It's her fault, Caleb pointed at me, his finger shaking. If she had just shared, I wouldn't have had to steal. She forced me to do this. The logic was so twisted, so perfectly sterling, that I almost laughed. Well, I said, since it's my fault, I guess I should finish what I started. If you are as disgusted by Caleb's entitlement as I was, hit that like button right now. Comment the number 1 if you want to see justice served. Let's show Caleb what the real world thinks of him. The mood in the room shifted from shock to something darker. Desperation, panic, the realization that there was no way out. Diana, Dad said, his voice low and menacing, if you report this, if you send your brother to jail, we will disown you. We will cut you out completely. You will have no family. You already disowned me, Dad, I said. You disowned me when you stole my college fund. You disowned me when you banned me from Grandma's funeral. I'm just making it official. I am divorcing you. We will sue you for elder abuse, Mom threatened, grasping at straws. We'll tell the court you manipulated us, that you tricked us into debt, that you preyed on our senility. Good luck with that, I said. My lawyer is Arthur Blackwood. He eats lawsuits like this for lunch. And besides, you aren't senile, Mom. You're just greedy. And the inheritance, Dad shouted. Grandma's money. We still have some of it left in a trust. You'll never see a dime of it. We will burn it before we give it to you. I laughed. Dad, I saw the probate records. You drained Grandma's estate 3 years ago. There is no inheritance. There is no trust. You spent it all on Caleb's consulting fees and your country club dues. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I haven't tracked every dollar? They went silent, exposed, stripped naked of their lies. But, I continued, speaking of inheritance, Grandma did leave me something you couldn't steal because you didn't know it existed. What? Mom asked sharply. She didn't have anything else. A letter, I said. She left a letter with her lawyer. She told me she knew you were stealing from her. She told me she was sorry she couldn't stop you because she was too sick and you controlled her access to the phone. And she told me to burn it all down if I had to. I reached into my purse and pulled out a folded, yellowed piece of paper. I unfolded it carefully. She knew, I said, and she gave me her blessing. Listen to this. Diana, my brave girl, don't let them break you. If they try to take your spirit like they took my money, you fight back. You are the only sterling with a spine. Mom looked like she had seen a ghost. Beatrice, she wouldn't. She loved us. She loved me, I corrected. She tolerated you. Caleb suddenly grabbed a steak knife from the table. It was a silver knife, heavy and sharp. The guests screamed. I'll kill you! He lunged at me. You ruined my life, you bitch! It happened in slow motion. I saw the glint of the blade. I saw the madness in his eyes. But Uncle Mitch was faster. He tackled him. It wasn't even close. Mitch was 60, but he was a Vietnam vet who stayed in shape. He slammed Caleb onto the Persian rug and twisted the knife out of his hand. Stay down, you spoiled brat, Mitch shouted, pressing a knee into Caleb's back. Don't you move. Dad didn't move to help his son. He didn't move to help me. He just sat there, staring at the floor, muttering to himself. "Call the police," I told Vance, who was waiting on the phone in my pocket. "Now." "No," Mom shrieked. "Diana, please, don't call the police. Think of the family name. Think of the scandal. We can send him to a clinic. We can say he had a breakdown." "The family name is dirt," I said, "and I'm cleaning it up." I walked over to the cake. The beautiful red velvet cake that cost $500. I reached into my bag and pulled out the final document, the eviction notice. I placed it gently on top of the cake, right over the word success. The paper absorbed the grease from the frosting. "Happy New Year," I said. The sirens were audible now, faint wails in the distance growing louder, cutting through the winter night. Blue and red lights began to flash against the windows, painting the room in a chaotic disco of justice. "You have 24 hours to vacate the premises," I announced to the room. "The locks will be changed at noon tomorrow. Anything left behind will be considered abandoned property and auctioned off to pay the remaining debt. And I will be keeping the security deposit." "Where will we go?" Mom wailed, collapsing onto the sofa. "We have nowhere to go. We have no cash." "I hear the Motel 6 on the highway has vacancies," I suggested cold-bloodedly. "Or maybe you can stay with one of your rich friends. Oh, wait, they all just left." It was true. The room was empty now, except for the family, Uncle Mitch, and the catering staff who were awkwardly standing in the corner. The friends had fled the sinking ship the moment the knife came out. "Diana," Dad said, looking up. His eyes were hollow, stripped of all arrogance. "How did it come to this?" "You made a choice, Dad," I said, crouching down to look him in the eye. "Every single day for 30 years, you made a choice. You chose him. You chose the image. You chose the lie. I'm just the reality check. I'm just the consequence. I can't leave this house," he whispered. "I built this life. I am Robert Sterling." "No, Dad," I said. "You bought this life on credit, and the bill is due. Robert Sterling is just a name on a foreclosure notice." The police arrived. 2 officers walked in, led by Vance. They looked serious, professional. "Caleb Sterling?" the officer asked. Caleb was still on the floor, pinned by Uncle Mitch. He was crying now, snot running down his face. "It's a misunderstanding. My sister is crazy. She's framed me. She hacked my computer." "We have the documents, sir," the officer said, pulling Caleb up and cuffing him. "You have the right to remain silent. We suggest you use it." As they dragged Caleb out, he was screaming obscenities at me. "I hope you die alone. I hope you rot. You're just jealous." He looked ugly. Not the golden boy anymore, just a scared, angry child who had never been told no. Mom tried to run after him, her heels slipping on the rug. "My baby! Don't hurt him! He has anxiety!" Then it happened. The stress was too much. Her eyes rolled back in her head. She fainted. Actually fainted. She collapsed forward, her knees giving out. Her face smashed directly into the side of the red velvet cake. It was tragic. It was grotesque. And honestly, it was the most satisfying thing I have ever seen. Red frosting smeared across her face like a clown mask as she slid down onto the table. Dad didn't move. He just watched his wife lying in the cake and his son being hauled away in handcuffs. He looked broken. "Are you happy?" he asked me, his voice barely audible. "No, Dad," I said. "I'm not happy. I'm relieved. There's a difference." I turned to Uncle Mitch. "Can you make sure Mom gets to a hospital? She's faking half of it, but she probably needs a sedative. And then help them pack. Just the essentials, clothes and toiletries." "I got it, kid," Mitch said, giving me a salute. "You go. You've done enough." Get out of here. I walked out of the mansion. The cold air hit my face. It felt clean. It felt like purification. I walked past the police car where Caleb was banging his head against the window like a trapped animal. I walked past the rusted Jeep in the driveway, the symbol of my first heartbreak. I got into my Volvo. I started the engine. I turned on the heater. I didn't look back. I drove away, leaving the lights, the sirens, and the ruins of the Sterling Empire behind me. The next few months were a whirlwind of legal proceedings, but for me, they were oddly calm. It was the calm of a storm that had finally passed. Mr. Blackwood handled everything. He was magnificent. He presented the receipts, the stack of evidence I had collected over 5 years. The bank records showing the misuse of funds, the emails where Caleb admitted to falsifying documents, the forged loan application, the witness testimony from Tiffany. It was an open and shut case. Caleb pleaded guilty to fraud to avoid a longer sentence. He tried to claim insanity, but the judge, a stern woman who had no patience for entitled rich boys, didn't buy it. He got 3 years in minimum security federal prison. My parents tried to fight the eviction for a week, claiming squatters' rights, but they had no money for lawyers. They were forced out by the sheriff. I went back to the house one last time before the auction. It was empty. The furniture was gone, sold to pay off other debts. The spots on the walls where the paintings used to hang were lighter than the rest of the paint, like ghosts of the past. It smelled of dust and failure. I walked into my old room. It was small. The window still had a draft. I remembered the nights I sat there, typing on that broken laptop, dreaming of escape. I remembered the hunger. I touched the wall. I did it, I whispered. We got out. I didn't keep the house. I sold it. I didn't want the bad energy. I didn't want the memories. I sold it to a nice young family who didn't care about the Sterling name. They just wanted a home for their kids. With the proceeds from the sale and the liquidation of Caleb's assets, I paid off the legitimate debts. I made sure the contractors Caleb had stiffed got paid. I made sure the caterers for the party got their money. I made sure the florist was paid. I cleaned up the mess, because that's what I do. I'm the responsible one. But I didn't give a penny to my parents. They moved into a small one-bedroom apartment in a nearby town. They live on their Social Security checks. They had to sell their jewelry, their cars, and their pride. I heard from Aunt Karen that Mom tells everyone who will listen that I stole the family fortune. That I'm a witch who deceived them. That I tricked Caleb into signing those papers. Let them talk. The truth is in the court records. The truth is in the fact that I am free and they are trapped in the consequences of their own actions. As for me, I got a promotion. I'm now a partner at Vanguard. I travel to Europe, for real this time. I go to Paris, to Rome, to London. I stay in nice hotels. But the best part, the absolute best part, I started a scholarship fund, the Beatrice Sterling Scholarship. It provides full tuition to Harvard for one female student every year who comes from a low-income background. I stole back the future they took from me, and I gave it to someone else. I gave it to a girl who needs a break, just like I did. 6 months after the party, I received a letter from jail. It was from Caleb. I stood in my kitchen, holding the envelope. It looked innocent enough, but I knew it was poison. I almost threw it away, but curiosity got the better of me. I opened it. Diana, it read, in his scrawling handwriting. I hate you. You ruined everything. You think you're so smart. When I get out, I'm going to take it all back. Mom and Dad say you cheated us. I know you did. You'll pay for this. I laughed. He hadn't changed. He never would. He was still the boy in the Jeep, thinking the world owed him a ride. He was still blaming me for his crimes. He was incapable of self-reflection. I put the letter in the shredder. I watched it turn into confetti. It was a beautiful sight. Tiffany came to see me a few weeks later. She had the baby, a little girl. She named her Hope. "I didn't know where else to go," she said, standing in my hallway, holding the baby. "My parents won't talk to me because of the scandal. They said I embarrassed the family by being associated with a felon." I looked at the baby. She was innocent. She didn't choose this family. She didn't choose a father who was a fraud. "You can stay in the guest room," I said, "until you get on your feet." Tiffany cried, "Why? After everything I did, I helped him spend your money." "Because you helped me," I said. "You gave me the smoking gun. And because family isn't about blood. It's about who shows up. It's about who tells the truth." I helped Tiffany get a job as a receptionist at my firm. She's smart. She works hard. She's going to night school to get her paralegal certification. She drives a Honda, and she loves it. She pays for her own gas. She pays for her own diapers. She is becoming the woman Caleb never let her be. Sometimes, late at night, we sit on my balcony and drink wine. We don't talk about Caleb. We talk about the future. We talk about hope. So, that's my story. It wasn't a fairy tale. There was no magical reconciliation. My parents still hate me. My brother is in prison. I am an orphan in every way that matters. But I am free. I sit on my balcony in D.C., overlooking the Potomac River. The sun is setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. I drink my coffee out of a mug that says Boss Lady. I learned that sometimes you have to burn the bridge to stop the enemy from crossing. I learned that you cannot save people who are determined to drown you to stay afloat. I learned that you cannot buy love, but you can buy freedom. I learned that no is a complete sentence. And most importantly, I learned that my worth is not defined by my parents' approval. It is defined by my own actions, my own integrity, and my own success. They called me cheap because I lived in a condo, but I was building a fortress. They called me boring because I saved my money, but I was buying my freedom. They called me ungrateful because I wouldn't let them rob me, but I was just being smart. If you are out there and you feel like the black sheep, if you feel like you are being used or overlooked or undervalued, if you are the one receiving the broken laptop while someone else gets the new car, listen to me. Keep your head down, do the work, save your money, keep your receipts, document everything, and wait. Because the day will come when the music stops. The day will come when the bill is due. And when it does, make sure you are the one holding the chair. Make sure you are the one holding the remote control. Don't let them gaslight you. Don't let them tell you that you owe them your life just because they gave you birth. You owe yourself happiness. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it touched you in some way. Have you ever had to cut off a toxic family member? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself against the people who were supposed to protect you? Comment the letter A if you made it to the end. You are the real ones. Please share your story in the comments and don't forget to like,